Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Last night I had the pleasure of seeing Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, and right off the bat I've got to say I like this movie way more than I thought I would. When the early reviews came out for this movie, I was pretty worried. People said it was messy, clunky, they didn't like how it ended. It was, it just wasn't getting great reviews, and I think it opened up to like a 50 something on Rotten Tomatoes. But let me tell you, if there is a movie that challenges critics' response and audience response, it's this movie, because I really like this way more than the critics did, clearly. So we're going to break down the movie, just basically go over the plot points, and then we're going to talk about what does it mean, how did I feel, what I liked, what I didn't like, etc. With that being said, a huge spoiler warning, because we're going to be talking about everything that did happen in this movie, who showed up, what happened to certain characters, and so on and so forth. So if you haven't seen the movie, I'm going to give you 5 seconds to get out of here and then save the video and come back to it later after you've seen the movie. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so this movie starts off with Scott kind of being a post-Avenger type character. He's not really a hero anymore. He wrote this book, and he's kind of living a different life where he's kind of separated from the heroics. We find out that Cassie, his daughter, has been, repeating the past and getting in trouble and going to jail like Scott has, and he's just not a fan of it, obviously. We find out that Cassie, Hope, and Hank have been working on quantum technology behind Scott's back, because Scott doesn't really want Cassie involved in any of this stuff, but she's really smart, she's intuitive, and she wanted to make this technology that she could possibly retrieve someone back from the quantum realm like she couldn't do for her dad when he was gone. Now, when Janet finds out about this, she's super skeptical and doesn't like it because she spent 30 years in the quantum realm and knows the dangers of the place. We find out that Cassie's actually been sending a signal to the quantum realm, and Janet freaks out and tells her to shut it down because what's down there you don't want to mess with. And of course, in movie fashion, everything goes wrong. They all get sucked down into the quantum realm, and this is where the movie really begins. I actually really like the opening parts of the movie. It started off, with this down-to-earth little scenario, and then it gradually gets bigger and bigger, and then bam, we're in the quantum realm, and everything is crazy. So when they first arrive in the quantum realm, Scott and Cassie get separated from Hank, Hope, and Janet. They both crash land in this beautiful-looking quantum city, for lack of a better term, and they're stranded. Cassie and Scott go off in one direction, and they end up falling into this sort of trap with these local people, while Hank, Hope, and Janet are kind of hiding and making their way towards a city that Janet knows about. And this whole time, Janet is trying to keep these secrets from her husband and her daughter about what happened when she was down in the quantum realm and who she met and the dangers of the place. We get a scene in the past, actually, where Janet was in the quantum realm for the first time, and we see this crash landing, and this guy crashes in a ship, and Janet helps him, and this is Kang the Conqueror. Janet met this guy on their first trip to the quantum realm, and they worked together to hopefully get out of there. But we learn more about that later. So Scott and Cassie are kind of being detained by these local people, and they are all different kind of species. There's humans, there's aliens, there's little blobs of people. It's really cool. Immediately, I got the Star Wars vibes. This whole movie is like a mix between Marvel and Star Wars, and it was so cool because in the recent years, Star Wars has kind of shied away from doing a lot of aliens. A lot of their characters have just been human, and we get kind of the same repetitive aliens over and over again in the shows. But this movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, has put more aliens and more species of creatures in this movie than Star Wars has in recent memory. So bravo to Marvel for that. We're introduced to a bunch of side characters. They're all really cool, but my favorite had to be Quaz. Quaz is a telepath, and he kind of sounds like the hero Quasar from the comics, but I'm not sure if they're the same person. Quaz is able to read people's minds, and there's actually a good bit of dialogue and some good humor. This movie does humor better than anything that the MCU has done in recent years, better than She-Hulk, better than Doctor Strange 2, way better than Thor: Love and Thunder. And all of it just hit for me, and I was so glad that it did, because Ant-Man has been doing that since the beginning, and I'm so glad that they recaptured it here in this third installment. We then jump back over to Hank, Hope, and Janet, and they need a ride to the city where they're going to find their way out. And it's weird because Janet knows all of these people, and they know her, and Hank and Hope are very confused. What has Mom not told us? What is going on here? We get some scenes that reminded me of Avatar, actually. They're riding these creatures through this water, and it's all trippy and psychedelic. But in all honesty, I like this movie better. They fly their little manta ray thing to this city, and we meet Bill Murray's character, who is Krylar. Now, I thought he was going to be in the movie a lot more than he was, but his scene was pretty cool. He was really only in one scene of the movie, and I find it weird that they're using such a high caliber actor for such a minor role. They want Krylar to help them get out of the quantum realm because Janet knows him from the past, But what we don't realize is that Krylar has actually been helping the leader of the quantum realm, who hasn't been named yet in the movie, and he doesn't really get named until sort of a quarter way / halfway through the movie. But we know it's Kang. Krylar basically tells him, look, he already knows you're here, and he's actually currently going after Scott and Cassie, and he's sending the Hunter. And I got really excited when they said this because the Hunter was Modoc. And we're going to get into Modoc because I actually loved him in this movie. I know some people didn't, but I mean, he's a giant face in the comic books. What do you expect? They did a great job. So Janet, Hope, and Hank, they all escape and everything's fine. Then we transfer back over to Scott and Cassie where they do some fighting. And it's at this point we meet Modoc for the first time. And man, they did such a good job. We get some really good context that people who haven't seen the first Ant-Man needed before watching this movie, because Darren Cross, the villain of the first movie, is actually Modoc. When Scott crunched him down at the end of the first Ant-Man movie, he went into the quantum realm and turned into Modoc, which stands for Mechanized Organism Designed Only for Killing. And he was just so funny. I mean, he's hell-bent on killing these people and just being the ultimate weapon. That's what he calls himself multiple times throughout the movie. They have a really cool fight scene, and a lot of this movie is CGI. All the backgrounds are CGI, a lot of the characters are CGI, but it didn't look bad. I mean, for a movie that is majority computer-generated images, I felt like I was in it. Which brings me to my main point about the CGI, and that is how they pulled Modoc off. Now, when we originally saw Modoc, we assumed that he was only going to be in the armor that was shown in the trailers and in pre-concept images, but he actually takes the armor off and we see the giant head, and it looks great. I mean, it's a giant head, guys. What do you expect? It's not going to be the most realistic looking thing in the world because it's not realistic, but what they did was super comic accurate, and I loved it. They have an awesome fight, and then Cassie and Scott get captured and they get brought to Kang for the first time. We flip back over and Janet is telling the story of how she met this guy when she was down in the quantum realm and how this person ended up being Kang. She said that he needed this sort of time chair / teleporter / multiversal vessel to travel, and he wanted her to help him fix it. Kang puts on this charm for Janet, and they end up working together to rebuild his time machine, for lack of a better term. And for a while, she thinks he's a good guy, but when they repair his ship, she touches it, which is neurally linked to Kang's mind, and she finds out who this guy really is, and he is a monster. Now, if you've seen the end of Loki Season 2, you know who He Who Remains is. He's actually a variant of Kang, and we basically get a retelling of the story of who this character is and why he's so important and why he poses such a threat. He's a destroyer of worlds. He wants to eliminate as many timelines as possible in order for him to reign supreme and conquer everything in existence. Janet then realizes that he is a horrible person and he cannot be let out of the quantum realm. She decides to trap him in there. By taking the core of his time chair, she uses Pym particles and blows it up. Therefore, Kang gets trapped in there, he can't get out, and Janet escapes. Then we know that the rest is history. Janet gets out, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp, etc. So she's been hiding all of this from her family and from everybody. She doesn't tell anybody how bad this guy is and basically how he is the end-all be-all of beings in the universe, in the multiverse. We then see Kang interrogate Cassie and Scott, and he is just menacing. I mean, he's using minimal effort, and he's just bending bones, bending backs, and hurting them without barely lifting a finger. We get some really cool dialogue where he talks about how he's killed an Avenger before, how he's killed Thor before, and we realize, oh, this guy is a major, major problem for the future of our characters. And he's going up against Ant-Man. There's a line where Kang says, "You're out of your league." And that really, really was super powerful because we realize, yeah, he is out of his league. He's an Ant-Man. Kang wants Scott to help him shrink down the core again so he can put it back in his time chair and he can leave the quantum realm once and for all. This was a really cool narrative arc because, Scott starts off as a thief in the first movie, and now he's doing thieving on a cosmic level or a quantum level. I just thought it was a really cool parallel. We get some wild action moments where Scott is going up to try and take back the core of the chair, and he starts splitting off into millions of versions of himself, and there were some really funny comedic moments where we see different versions of Scott, and we actually see the one where he worked at Baskin-Robbins, and this was great. The comedy, again, was actually really, really good, and it wasn't overstaying its welcome. It wasn't cheesy. I mean, it was just the right amount. And meanwhile, Scott has to do this because if he doesn't, Kang is going to kill Cassie, and he promised him that he would. But Kang said if he did do this for Kang, he would be able to live, see his daughter again, and get out. But you can't trust the guy. You never can. Because he's a conqueror. I mean, this is what he does. This is his whole life goal, is to lie, manipulate, and deceive and get what he wants. And Jonathan Majors does a fantastic job in this movie. He plays such a different version of his character from Loki, and I loved it. This one is more stoic, more driven, more passionate. gets angrier. He has kind of a shorter temper, and I thought that was really, really cool. He's this powerful force that every time he's on screen, he steals the show, and I'm glad to say that we are going to be seeing more of Jonathan Majors as Kang in the future, and let me tell you, I think he can beat Thanos as the #1 villain. I'm almost positive of it. So they get the core back, and then we have this fight between Kang and everybody else, and Kang is getting super upset because his plan isn't going accordingly, and we just see this aggression and anger leak out of him, and he is just this angry guy, and he's demolishing all these people and just really causing chaos to his own empire. You know, he's been down here for so long, but he's from the future, so his technology is so much more advanced, hundreds of years into the future, if not more, and he's able to build these civilizations and these armies at the snap of a finger. So he's got armies, and they're fighting against the people of the quantum realm who want to break free from his control. And this is kind of Cassie's main story in the movie. She wants to be a helper. She wants to do more than just write a book like her dad after saving the day once. She wants to do more, she wants to help people, and she wants to set these ones free. So we get this kind of war between the quantum people and Kang's army, and it was really nice because it was reminding me of Star Wars. Again, this whole movie was like Star Wars and Marvel mixed, and I was here for it because I love both. Near the end of the movie, they're trying to get the machine back up and running so they can leave the quantum realm, but prevent Kang from leaving. Hank, Hope, Janet, Cassie, all of them get to the other side, and Scott stays back to fight Kang to make sure he doesn't get out. And Kang is just so anxious and so rabid, honestly, at the moment, because he just wants to go through this portal and be on Earth. He just wants to get out of here, and they can't let him. We have this awesome fist fight between Kang and Scott, and it was just so nice to finally see some hand-to-hand combat that isn't just laser guns and giant CGI battles. Now, that stuff is in the movie, but it was nice to get some hand-to-hand combat that was reminiscent of Winter Soldier and the other down-to-earth Marvel movies. They end up using the Pym particles to take Kang down, put him against the machine, and they shrink him down to oblivion. He's gone, but we know he's not gone. Once again, Ant-Man has saved the day, and a happy ending? No, not exactly. It's going to be a happy ending, but it's not a happy ending because we know what happens next. During this fight, Hope actually comes and saves the day and helps Scott defeat Kang. And I say defeat lightly because they kind of just stall him for a bit so they can get out and he can be dealt with. He's not necessarily gone. He's just shrunk down somewhere even smaller. So Scott goes back home with Hope, and they have a happy ending. And honestly, the only weird part of this movie to me was the very last scene. The editing just seemed really off. They're having this dinner for Cassie's birthday, but it's not actually her birthday. Scott just missed a bunch because he was blipped out. And the end just kind of cuts right to the credits. It was very, very abrupt, and I didn't like that at all, but it didn't really dampen my experience for the whole movie. I also forgot to mention earlier, when Kang is fighting all of the heroes and all of the people that are from the quantum realm, Modoc actually has a change of heart because of Cassie and saves the day. And by save the day, I mean he just stalls Kang for a couple seconds before he gets demolished and allows the heroes to get the advantage. There's a really funny moment when Modoc is dying and he's like, well, at least I died an Avenger. And Scott's like, yeah, you can be an Avenger. Yeah, sure, buddy. It was just really funny because, I mean, they took Modoc from being this killing machine and a funny character to this kind of sympathetic character, and we feel bad for the guy. But I'm not mad about it. I don't really want to see Modoc get his own movie. I'm glad they put him in this movie because it was perfect. I thought the pacing of it was really good. I mean, I was never bored watching it. There was tons of action scenes, explosions, and then good dialogue moments. I wish there was maybe a little bit more dialogue between Kang and the rest of the characters, and I wish he was maybe in the movie a little bit earlier than he was, but we're going to get more of him, so it's okay. Now, let's talk about the post-credit scenes. Now, unlike a lot of the Marvel movies in recent years, these post-credit scenes matter big time. Earlier in the movie and in the end of Loki Season 1, we find out that there are countless versions of Kang in the multiverse, and Kang the Conqueror's goal is to get rid of all of them so he can remain the one and only and reign supreme. Now that the Conqueror has been dealt with for, the time being, there are plenty of Kangs out in the multiverse. And this first post-credit scene actually shows a few of the Kangs. We get the Pharaoh version, which I believe is Raman Tut. We get an alien version, and we get a super futuristic version. And we find out that they are planning to meet with all of them, and then we see this giant coliseum full of Kangs. There's like a Skrull one, there's a bunch of alien ones, and then there's some that are just downright crazy. Clearly, this is going to lead into Avengers 5, which is Avengers the Kang Dynasty. It makes perfect sense. And it looked wild. I don't know how they're going to manage so many characters. I'm sure they're going to probably kill a bunch of them off, and maybe they're going to even be like the enemies of the Avengers that they can just sort of kill. Now, the second post-credit scene, I actually like even more because it's something that we're getting even sooner. We see another version of Kang in like the 1920s, 1800s, somewhere very old in history, presenting this idea for time travel and electricity. Now we know it's a version of Kang, but it's not a version of Kang we've seen before. It pans to the audience and we see our beloved character, who I called it, he was going to be in this movie one way or the other, Loki. Loki and Mobius are stalking this guy and trying to find out if he is a real threat like Loki said he was at the end of season 1. And this got me so excited for season 2 of Loki. I loved the first season, and before watching Ant-Man 3, I actually went back and watched season 1, and the last episode where we meet He Who Remains / Kang, it got me so excited because it sets up so much, and we actually did get a little bit of payoff this movie, but they're going to save it and pay it off even more in the future. Now, this is an Ant-Man movie. I'm not expecting a Best Picture nomination. I'm not expecting anything too serious. I'm going into this movie to have fun, and I did. I had so much fun watching this movie. I didn't take it too seriously, but the moments that were serious, I loved. The standouts were Kang the Conqueror, Scott and Cassie's relationship, and Modoc. We had fun, we had some serious moments. This was honestly a pretty strong setup for Phase 5. Now, people aren't going to really like that, but at this moment, I'm kind of thinking of the Marvel movies more as episodic television. You know, each of these movies plays a part in the bigger picture. It's not just one standoff movie, and some people don't like that, and I completely understand that. And if you guys feel that way, let me know down below. But if we want to build up to these grand movies, we have to set things up. And Phase 4 set up a bunch of things, but I feel like Phase 5 is really going to start giving us some payoff that we need. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I liked this movie way more than I thought I would, and I hope you guys did too. So please let me know down below. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let me know what you thought. I can't wait to see more of Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror. He has so many really nice scenes in this movie that really set up who his character is, but it still leaves a bunch of room for mystery that is going to be explained hopefully later on. He's menacing, he's evil, but you can tell he is so powerful and it's hard to take control from him. I have a feeling that Ant-Man just got lucky in this movie, and it's going to be much harder the next time around. Again, thank you all so much, and I will see you very soon.